So we've established the conspiracism of Alice Bailey. Now let's talk a little bit about her spiritual predecessor, Helena Blavatsky. I mentioned at the beginning of the video that Satan is the father of the conspiracy or truth movement. It's always associated with the idea of truth, represented by the red pill, which is a modernized version of the apple of wisdom, knowledge, or truth. Hence the truther motto, and the truth shall set you free. Well, the motto of the Theosophical Society, founded by Helena Blavatsky, is there is no religion higher than truth. And I think this is the real source of the truth movement. And although I consider Alice Bailey the mother of conspiracy theory, I would consider Blavatsky a grandmother of sorts, because the conspiracy movement contains a lot of her spiritual and intellectual DNA as well. And this is perhaps the strongest evidence that the truth movement truly has no existence independent of the New Age movement, because the roots of trutherism are found in both Bailey and Blavatsky's writings, which also serve as the foundation of the New Age movement. Now, first of all, there's the obvious Gnosticism. She said that the Gnostics were the spiritual forerunners of the Theosophists. And in that spirit, she regarded Yahweh or Jehovah as the jealous, repenting, cruel, tribal God of the Israelites, nearly identical to Bailey's remark about Jehovah being the tribal God of the Jews. So if Gnosticism is the original conspiracy theory, then both Bailey and Blavatsky affirm their adherence to that original conspiracy theory. Also, there's her belief that everything finite is illusion, which is foundational to the conspiracy mentality and the idea of the Matrix, as I talked about back in part 3, the idea that everything is a lie. In fact, she's likely the origin of the term Matrix as it's used by the conspiracy movement. Not that she coined the term, but she used it all throughout her writings. And Jordan Maxwell, who's another Gnostic conspiracist that maybe we'll be talking more about at some point in the future, he was one of the pioneers of the movement and was a great admirer of Blavatsky. One of Maxwell's books is called Matrix of Power, which I believe is the first time that the term matrix was applied to the New World Order. And Maxwell claims that his book was the inspiration behind the Matrix movie, because he apparently knew some people in Hollywood who were intrigued by the idea, and they got it from his book. And although Blavatsky didn't use the term matrix in a purely negative sense, like the conspiracy movement does today, it's pretty likely that Maxwell got the term from her and decided to use it as an analogy for the New World Order, and that was the genesis of the term matrix being used as an analogy for the New World Order. Another conspiracy buzzword that has connections to Blavatsky, or at least to her Theosophical Society, is the term truth seeker. This is a very, very popular moniker that New Agers and conspiracists use for themselves. They often call themselves truth seekers. And no doubt many self-proclaimed truth seekers who will watch this video will be deeply offended, which will only prove my point even further about the Gnostic nature of that moniker. For example, here's a New Age conspiracy YouTube channel called Truth Seeker. He identifies as a Christian mystic. He says over here, download my free meditation at truthseeker.com. And he's got a ton of New Age and conspiracy-related videos, stuff on ayahuasca and psychedelics, videos about raising your vibration, a lot of stuff on aliens, and he's even got some videos about Jordan Maxwell himself, fittingly enough. In fact, he interviewed Maxwell a few years back before he died. Here's another example, an account on X called Truth Seeker, with over 230,000 followers, and it posts nothing but conspiracy-related topics. Here's one from 2023, World's First Vaccine Created by Freemason. Another one, the Illuminati are destroying agriculture and livestock along with their governments. Another one, the dark side of Disney, MK Ultra, and Club 33. Here's one about Big Pharma, and one on chemtrails. Here's a Patriot news site called the Truth Seekers 88. And as you can see on their homepage, they're part of the QAnon movement. You're guiding light in a world of darkness. More like guiding false light. And they sell something called Wave Watch, a sound wave healing therapy. It says, improve your health fast with this self-care tool. Have you ever heard of sound wave healing therapy? Just like the stuff Mickey Willis was talking about, healing frequencies. And then here's a few other examples of other conspiracists using the term truth seeker.
Here's the truth seeker, the snake charmer, a legend in his own mind, broadcasting live all over the universe. Your host, Mr. Tim Ray.
All right, welcome to Frequency Wars. I am Tim Ray, your host, and we have an out-of-this-world show for you today. We have Elizabeth April. She's a paradigm shifter and truth seeker. So much more to talk about, guys. We have Elizabeth April. She's a paradigm shifter, truth seeker.
I'm honored to be interviewed by Alex Jones, a truth seeker.
You are not a conspiracy theorist. You are a researcher with facts and evidence. Truth seekers are not breaking from reality. They are breaking from a shared reality.
We have to come up with a new word for conspiracy theory, right? The conspiracy theory situation, I mean, I know that that's your...
I like truther, or just...
Yeah, truth seeking. You know, I came in it through the ET world because I started reading and I found out the massive culture cover up with ETs. And then I've had my own experiences. So I'm like, you can't tell me that I'm not having this experience.
And we look at that as a means of reaching out to our friends and neighbors who are truth seekers. They know something is wrong. They haven't read all the books. They haven't been students like we have, but they want to know.
Now, what's interesting about the term truth seeker is that it was used over 150 years ago by a man named D.M. Bennett, who was a controversial publisher and free speech advocate in the 19th century. He founded a periodical called The Truth Seeker, which promoted very radical opposition to tyranny, which is what got him in trouble. And of course, that lines up with the false light movement today, which is likewise opposing the tyranny of the New World Order. And the periodical is still in print today. Here's their website. The Truth Seeker, the world's oldest free thought publication, founded by D.M. Bennett in 1873. And interestingly, Bennett became a member of the Theosophical Society. Here's the website of the Theosophical Society in America, originally founded by Blavatsky. And they have a page devoted to Bennett. D.M. Bennett, the Truth Seeker. It says, like Thomas Paine and Annie Besant as well, Annie Besant took over the Theosophical Society after Blavatsky, Bennett expressed his views in print in a periodical he founded called The Truth Seeker. And like Besant, Bennett was persecuted for his unconventional ideas and was accused of immorality as an excuse for that persecution. He served time in a New York penitentiary, and after his release, he traveled abroad, meeting and being honored by Besant in England. He also visited Henry Steele Olcott and H.P. Blavatsky in India, where he joined the Theosophical Society, whose motto, "There is no religion higher than truth," was fully in line with his convictions. So Bennett personally knew Blavatsky and other key figures of the Theosophical Society and became a member himself. Here's the first edition of The Truth Seeker from 1873, in which Bennett outlines their platform. It says, "We embrace, as in one brotherhood, liberals, free religionists, rationalists, spiritualists, universalists, Unitarians, friends, infidels, freethinkers, and in short, all who dare to think and judge for themselves," which is very similar to the first goal of the Theosophical Society, which is to form a nucleus of the universal brotherhood of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, caste, or color. So it's no wonder that Bennett saw the Theosophical Society's values in line with his, as they both believed in this idea of the brotherhood of humanity who would oppose the tyranny of the mind. Then he says, "We have no creed or dogmas to ask others to subscribe to, but are in favor of independent thought, free inquiry, free speech, and everything that tends to break the chains of mental bondage, ignorance, and superstition. And there's the Gnostic salvation, breaking the chains of mental bondage. The whole concept of truth-seeking implies an egotistical, self-centered, Gnostic pursuit of truth, where the person tries to figure out how the world works. As David Icke said about Gnosticism, that salvation comes through knowledge of reality and how it works. That's truth-seeking. That's what people mean when they say they're truth seekers. They're trying to figure out the world outside themselves instead of figuring out what's going on in their own hearts, which is the truth that they really should be seeking. Truth-seeking is associated with the idea of free thinking. It's this idea that I'm a free, independent thinker and researcher, like Alexandra said, and I've got a lot of things figured out. I know how the world works. It's all about the self. It's egotistical and narcissistic. And that's why the conspiracy movement has adopted this term. If truth-seeking was really about seeking actual truth, then most truth seekers would be actual Christians. But they're not. They're New Age conspiracists and false converts. You don't find Jesus after 30 years of so-called truth-seeking down the rabbit hole. That's not how it works. Because for those 30 years, that person was hardening their hearts against real truth, suppressing it in their unrighteousness, and using conspiracy research to numb themselves to their unrighteousness to make themselves feel better by researching people more wicked than they are. Once again, it's like the Pharisee in Luke 18. Thank you, Lord, that I'm not wicked like them. And again, it's much, much easier to research the evil of other people and to look at them instead of looking at the evil in your own heart. If they were really seeking truth, they would have found Jesus a long time ago. You don't find real truth after decades of pursuing false truth. But that's what we have today, an epidemic of false converts claiming that they finally found Jesus after decades of deception and truth-seeking. Doreen Virtue being a prime example. If you found Jesus at the bottom of the rabbit hole, you found a false Jesus, plain and simple. And note how Bennett lists all these groups, spiritualists, universalists, Unitarians, etc., all coming together to help break the chains of mental bondage. That describes the modern truth movement to a T. It's a mixture of theosophy, New Age, heretical Christianity, patriotism, rebellion to tyranny, etc., coming together to break the chains of the bondage of the matrix. Right? As Ralph Smart said, it's a program in the mind.
How can you fight an illusion? How can you fight something which is not real out there? It only exists as a program in your mind.
Right? It's mental bondage. Just like D.M. Bennett said, breaking the chains of mental bondage. And so by exposing the New World Order, the truth movement, composed of truth seekers like Bennett was, is continuing in that same antichrist spirit of radical rebellion to tyranny that Bennett and Blavatsky had. It's the truth seekers exposing the New World Order who are building this brotherhood of man that will set the stage for the Antichrist.
What they're terrified of is not protest, but in us coming together, no matter what race, no matter what religion or no religion.
All of us together, of every race, color, and creed, as one humanity.
And as a truth seeker herself, Blavatsky exposed some of the same things that the conspiracy movement does today. Most notably, the Jesuits, who she said were the most powerful and evil black magicians in the world. In an article called Theosophy or Jesuitism, she said that the Jesuits have practiced not only occultism, but black magic in its worst form, more than any other body of men, and that to it they owe in large measure their power and influence. This is a very conspiratorial statement. As I mentioned before, conspiracists tend to place the Jesuits at the top of the New World Order, along with the Zionists and Freemasons. For example, Champerinia includes them on his Great Awakening map right next to the Freemasons. Dylan Monroe has them on the Deep State map, or QWeb, right near the top. Underneath it says God's Assassins.
Through the Vatican, through the Jesuits, that eventually ended up in the CIA.
David Icke in The Biggest Secret says the Jesuits go very high in the Illuminati network. And in Children of the Matrix, he says, the Roman Catholic Jesuit movement is an important vehicle for the manipulation of the global conspiracy. Janet Osbar talks about them in Fall of the Cabal. She says, did you think the roof was Charles, the Rockefellers, George Soros, the government leaders, even the royal families? Did you think they are at the top of the 1%? They're not. There is a very dark order above them all, making puppets of everybody else, even of kings and queens. Ever heard of the Jesuit order? So the Jesuits are at the top of the top, just like Blavatsky said. Also, these New Age blogs that talk about the archons and the matrix, they also mention the Jesuits. It says here in the True Matrix story, the Jesuit organization is the hiding place on the surface of the planet for the archons that are incarnated in the black nobility families. The Jesuits are working under the command of the archons to maintain the quarantine status of planet Earth, and that they are going to team up with the Rothschilds to take over the process of creating the new financial system. And then on the portal, it says, on the physical plane, the archons are incarnated within the Jesuit organization, and they spiritually control their administrators. Through Jesuit societies and 33rd degree Freemasons, they hold the Illuminati structure together. This structure is now finally falling. Also, probably Alexandra said that the Jesuits are one of the groups who've created the artificial matrix that's transmitted into the lower atmosphere, and also mentions them all throughout her video in Inconvenient History.
We live in an artificial matrix that is transmitted into the lower atmosphere by the royal and noble bloodlines, priests, rabbis, imams, and different occultists, including but not limited to brothermen and Jesuits. Jesuit James Bauer created a program called Genesis, which is a bio and neurosimulator created to hack the human brain and body. At this time, also, the Jesuits took a more active hand in brothermanry than ever, and through Jesuit leadership, brothers controlled the Vatican and the Catholic Church.
And fittingly, Jordan Maxwell, as a spiritual child of Blavatsky, also exposed the Jesuits, which he no doubt read about from Blavatsky.
And send them to Central America, South America, Uruguay, and Paraguay, which incidentally, those two countries were founded by Jesuits. Probably some of the most powerful criminal syndicate in the world is the Jesuits.
Now, just to be clear, the Jesuits being considered high up in the Illuminati still doesn't take away from the Jews and Israel being the ultimate target here. Because the general contention in the conspiracy movement is that the Jesuits and the Vatican are under the control of the Freemasons and Rothschilds. For example, in this clip of Alexandra that I played earlier.
A lot of people think that the Catholic Church is the one running the world and making all the plans, but they don't know how the CIA, the communists, Rothschilds, and the brothers are the ones running the Catholic Church.
So most still consider the Vatican and Jesuits under the umbrella of Zionist control. And plus, the Jesuit element reinforces the idea of the demiurge being the god of the Illuminati, since the Jesuits are an offshoot of Christianity, and the demiurge is the god of the Jews, Christians, and Muslims. So it still doesn't deviate from Jerusalem being the ultimate target of the beast. And Blavatsky's statement about the Jesuits being the most powerful black magicians is conspiratorial not just because of the mention of the Jesuits, but also because of her statement that they owe their power and influence to their black magic. This is exactly what truthers say about politicians and celebrities, that they got to where they are because they practiced Satanism or sold their souls, a la Spencer Smith and Good Fight Ministries, and they sold their souls for rock and roll documentary. That's how the conspiracy mind operates. And we see that exact same line of thinking in Blavatsky. She also talked about the Jesuits in ISIS Unveiled, which interestingly is the book that David G. Robertson compared with David Icke's The Biggest Secret, and is also the book that Jordan Maxwell said was Blavatsky's best work. She said, "The Jesuits have done more moral harm in this world than all the fiendish armies of the mythical Satan, and that the Jesuits practically control Romanism or Catholicism today and are the hidden enemy that would-be reformers must encounter and overcome. Throughout the whole of antiquity, where and what land can we find anything like this order or anything even approaching it? We owe a place to the Jesuits in this chapter on secret societies. For more than any other, they are a secret body and have a far closer connection with actual Masonry, in France and Germany at least, than people are generally aware of." So she mentions the Masons too. Quite conspiratorial Blavatsky was. And that's why David Robertson compared Isis Unveiled with Icke's The Biggest Secret, because they both pair New Age and occultism with a secret history about dark secret societies and positions of power. That's what conspiracy history is. This is part of the darker aspects of history that Dylan Monroe said at the Conscious Life Expo that the world needs to learn in order to raise the consciousness of the planet. And he includes the Jesuits on his deep state map. Right? So the Jesuits are a key element of this dark secret history that we need to learn in order to enter the age of Aquarius. The fact that Blavatsky exposed secret societies is solid evidence that she's an ancestor of the truth movement. On the Great Awakening map, it says secret societies right underneath Cabal, Deep State, Illuminati. Also, the Cabal section on Gaia TV mentions the top secret societies of the Freemasons and Illuminati. And Janet Osbard says in Fall of the Cabal, "The Q drops open my eyes to a whole new world, a world of secret societies. This is what the conspiracy movement is obsessed with. Secret societies."
What is the Cabal? Who is the Cabal? A secret organization, a secret society?
This is one of the ways the secret society networks operate.
They're the ones that control the deep state. They're the ones that all of the highest echelon secret societies report to.
Even mainstream media posting things about secret societies and stuff you never even would have thought would be on mainstream media 3, 4, 5 years ago.
The World Health Organization, the IMF, the Bank of International Settlements, the monarchy in England, they have all been in on it. The Club of Rome, there are all these secret societies that JFK lost his life over.
And so everyone who's exposing the Jesuits and other secret societies tied to the New World Order is carrying on Blavatsky's work, whether they realize it or not. They're white magician truth seekers exposing the black magicians. And that's why she and the rest of the Theosophical Society so emphatically embraced a man like D.M. Bennett, who was a radical opponent of tyranny, because the Theosophical Society was likewise radically opposed to tyranny, which would obviously include the New World Order. And that's why Blavatsky exposed secret societies. She was an early opponent of the tyranny of the New World Order. As Alice Bailey wrote in Reappearance of the Christ, "When true freedom covers the earth, we shall see the end of tyranny, politically, religiously, and economically," which directly corresponds with the popular Christian adage, "Resistance to tyranny is obedience to God." They're all rising up against the tyranny of Babylon. Also, Peter Joseph, the producer of the famous Zeitgeist films, which have been some of the most popular conspiracy documentaries ever made, especially the first one, which came out in 2007, and includes Jordan Maxwell and Aaron Russo. He's also an admirer of Blavatsky. And continuing with the Gnostic theme of the prison planet, the cover of the first film features an earth with a prison grid around it, indicating that the underlying message of the film is a fundamentally Gnostic one that exposes humanity's imprisonment by the Illuminati. So Blavatsky's imprint on the conspiracy movement is also pretty undeniable.